just make a short video. View, as it's called. That thing that in Girls in Completeness, you negate everything. You get a thing that refers in the language to its own falsity, which means the natural numbers which actually satisfy that formula. It's not actually proven in the system. Now, I think it's reasonably straightforward to see that the actual sequence, all its finite subsequences are codable. The final one isn't as a proof, as I think it belongs to another type of Pythagorean triple sequence. So that's that. So yeah. Now, there is the classification theory for first order logic, and you wonder, well, why first order logic? So if so many models are okay, then there's a categorical model, then there's a categorical one in all of them above, which is more is rank from classical goals. However, there's stability theory for that, geometric stability theory, etc. Now, with these double triples encoding the Gödel numbers, which are also, I've noted, the exterior wedge product, quite simply, on Dirac operators on a certain Lie algebra. I can't really Lie algebras. Their symbolic space, which is formed the same thing under linearity assumptions. So we are moving to the question of non-linearity, where things are actually in equilibrium, like proofs are in actual equilibrium. They're dynamic. They find themselves in Melius's chaosmosis somehow, adding to themselves. The strange thing that I've seen a few times in the real world. Well, I used to always fantasize that I would become a very large prime number whose factors don't exist in the real world exactly, but may somehow sort of exist. But they may exist in two different formulations. I don't know, combination. I don't know. Very large prime number. Past the foreseeable consequences of the equals relationship without an equivalence. The equivalence obviously homotopy type theory of some sort, which is a feeling. So beyond the normal classification theorem, then we can see that there are these abstract equivalence classes which basically code up in more general format first order logic to include some infinitary languages. Now, and they can kind of behave okay. There are certain classification problems on that which haven't actually been solved. I don't think they're actually too difficult if you assume the right large cardinal, which has been in some context with the strongly compact class variables which you can have, which I actually think can be put down to subcompacts in some ways of the non-commutative variety. A unique branch through one means kind of a unique ultra filter as on statutory tower filter on those omega triples, omega sequences, and that those branches don't diverge, it seems. There is one unique category set after another. The categories are the feeling types, which in something like Guattari would be the phylum he talks. Sort of been thinking about the phylum as love, but the feeling Badiou says as science, politics, art, love as the conditions of all philosophy. I would say the fifth is empathy, which is different from love, and also there are the dualities one finds in the world topologically. Now, so all abstract elementary classes is a slightly more extended first order logic. It seems that it breaks down and doesn't exist for subcompact cardinals or Octonians at all. And that's where it breaks down. It's assuming that there are these direct limits. As any ordinal you can get, there's a direct limit. so that if it has a domain, then that you can press on forward. That's exactly what you can't do with these Erdős type cardinals that don't match up to a full measure. So beyond all abstract elementary philosophy was very interesting new logics which seem to be merely relating the consistent algebras, or more generally von Neumann algebras, and a particular type of not topology, whether that's not commutative or affine. Yeah, so there seems to be this strong relationship which will be uncovered through higher Kac-Moody-Lie algebras, E9, 10, 11, 12, 13, million, 10, with this prime number that I think I am. Maybe the world would carry on without me for centuries, but I'll be there, and I will be called upon, because God does not waste anything. Even the most high and esoteric prime number that I seem to be on will at some point in the universe be called upon to perform his duty, and I may just lay there, it's my time, and say, well, I would rather not. Now, would that be dangerous? I think it would. Anyway, so beyond abstract elementary classes, it seems to code up the back and forth arguments to the simple game theory of n and foot phrasing things and uncountable languages, and there is subcompact somewhere of non-commutative variated, and well, it splits things into two, which can, on further comparison of the topologies, heal itself in the motif of motifs at the end of the universe, which has its own ultrafilter structure at different times. However, what he wants to do, he does. So, beyond abstract elementary classes is the final. At each stage, or finite stage of the universe, they could be broken up in any way you want to form some sort of monster model of that class of theories. I mean, so it all come down to actually, in a non-equilibrium situation, how exactly the differential operator of Dirac is actually manifesting and affecting the holes in the Kohn algebra, which is known, at least for one derivative, at least for one level of derivative, that actually you can define a pseudo-metric on that, which there can be equals. The equality in the classification of these types of models would be the equality of that model, that sense of equality between a distance operator made from the actual Kohn C-star norm, which is on the octonions also as a norm division algebra. So you would get things equal that do not feel equal, things that feel equal that do not actually aren't the same. You can have, I can have my thoughts are all contained in yours, and yours are always contained in mine, or part of mine are all contained in another part, and part of my other ones are contained in another one. But indeed, they are different actually thought systems, because I feel differently about them, and they are on a different equivalence class of non-abstract elementary classes. This is these elementary considerations may actually form something very interesting in the global structure of everything, the relationship between all things that can think and all things that can feel. So the three things, the covalent things, are they really about thinking, science, politics, art? The resolution seems to be these things. That's thinking, and the phyla, it seems to be feeling. So yeah, these things do break apart. You need different Gödel curlings in the same system. They're competing, they're overlapping, they're forming their own ultras. I suppose this is the reason with the different encodings of Gödel that you actually get these non-standard ultrafilters, which must have the first omega missing from that. So there must be non-standard numbers. That's all it is. Different codings. The view refers to different coding because the stationary tower force in non-stationary for chaos Moses or non-deterministic finite parameters, beyond those, then you switch to the other coding because you can't actually reshuffle that thing in an infinite sequence. They belong to different ultrafilters. That is a justification for the whole theory. It comes down to something very, very simple. It's very powerful. And you can show inductively that they must exist somewhere in the world to break up things, to break up the feeling of mankind and the animal world, even the world of paranoia's sexual object fixation of a chair onto me, these gaze. Cinema, the ages of the cinema, the brainoid, how it goes, it disturbs so much. Well, so to define these non-abstract elementary classes, have they done before? I don't know, I've not seen them. Connected to this is what I've sort of thought about before, is the decidability of model completeness of exponentiation with the reals. Yeah. That actually connects to Jensen's L forcing and his subcompactions, probably sub D forcing, what it's called. So, yeah, that would be the switch off point. If those sorted old shops, then you don't iterate one past the other, but no, because beyond subcompacting, you get two compartments, and you need to have the joint adjoint of that octonion to find its partner. But of course, things in the real world don't have their partners. Always, one desires it. One searches the world for one's adjoint and only finds an emission pair. But somewhere in the world there is that one. Eventually you'll find it. In this world or another world. So, I am indeed going to start looking at Brentano's space-time and the continuum. As the formation of Husserl's phenomenology, intentionality, it seems to fit so well into that, even perhaps into ideas of phenomenological quantum mechanics. But the whole thing resolves into this empathy, the empathy of a thought taken in to the global feelings of Lacan's schemas. They face back in that extended phenotype back into the mirror image of the self who resolves itself and goes forward. It's very much connected there. So, non-abstract elementary class theory will depend very much on these higher Lie groups of Kac Moody with their Cartan and Jordan sub-algebras. E12 has been looked at a little, and I think it has certain ways to derive the fine structure constant of physics. At the end of the world, at least, if everything is resolved, you can predict. I imagine the idea is that in a part of that world, the sub-world of that bubbles, the actual pleroma of Brentano, if that is the word, which I'll find out very soon, that pleroma will actually be different for the whole thing. It will, in fact, all be a measure of billiard ball packing in different dimensions, and those different sub-dimensions being brought up dynamically in the system and fed backwards from the omega Groteford at the end, which would be Christogenesis, a definite point, which is manufactured by the failure of replacement on the monster groups, the monster algebras. very much behind all this Lie algebra. Maths seems rather boring and tedious thing, really. Every field is pretty much the same. Arithmetic, geometry. Yeah. I read the other day some stuff about iterating through Borel operators on the power of certain natural numbers and certain internal gaps of sub models. And yeah, it's the same thing they were dealing with there. It's trivial probably, but higher up it's more interesting. It's the same phenomena, but they'll get the idea of doing it topologically. That sort of meaning. Where is the topology there? Where is the topology in that? I suppose, yeah, they do recognise there are gaps. So it's the beginning of that theory, unfortunately. But yeah, I move away from this maths into a non-abstract elementary classes and Brentano. Why do I believe there will be a connection when I know nothing about either? There will be. I know there will be. Brentano, his book, is described as not for the faint-hearted, assuming everything he'd done before. Yeah. I've lost the book. I've got to read on computer. Not very happy about that, but I'll have to. Parosis, pleroma. God filling his own plenum with distinctions as he bars. I see those bars floating in Genesis. Well, what will these books contain? Almost elementary classes. I've got quite a good theory, really. Apart from the main categoricity themes are not proven. I don't see why they shouldn't be quite easily disposed of, really. More than one equivalence class. Resolve later. Very nice things are these things that the Gödel numbers and the Pythagorean triples, and their two ways relating to the Hydra Hercules are in fact over the octonions. They form a natural cohomology. Minus c squared plus c squared minus ji equals ij. Those are the hyperbolic surfaces. Those are the non-commutative geometries. They go to zero at the end of the world on a certain ultrafilter on that end of the world, which feeds back through Christ's everlastingly divine body. That body defined through points, the maximal points in the world at the end. Well, not that there is an end, because there's an omega group already comes back from itself in the dynamical systems which are present in non-commutative system. And so it comes back to the original thing I read when I was an undergraduate about spin networks, which seemed to be a little bit neglected. Apart from they have formed the idea of quantum knot theory of things, loopy gravity, quantum gravity, loopy belief propagation, and their gaps indeed, the way the road tears apart itself for a while. I suppose those things are knots and loops which aren't trivial. If they go to an affine plane at the end, then things really are commutative, and that loop finishes in a point which is a point of light, and that is the space-time structure. That relates Mauss theory in the most general form, including the long extenders, which can't be placed anywhere, but there is an intrinsic argument that they must actually exist somewhere, and there is an implicit solution at some point, either there or not. That is the solution actually to the quantum geometric Langlands conjecture, which is solved. I have solved it, yeah. at the end of the universe. I have solved that, at least understood the solution. Yeah, so that involves the Fourier-Mazur transformation of Calabi-Yau space or twistors into SO32, that iterating past another example in the world of the continuum. As it increases, the thing will increase in a measure of time because the covalent measures have that structure, although the logging extenders do not. It goes back and forth all over that constant of the speed of the graviton, whatever, interpreted at whatever scale it needs to be. So yeah, that geometric Langlands is quite easily solved, and you can look and see what that algebraic curve is over the complexes. It is actually the one dimension merely refers to everything is defined by these double ones of the measurables and the omega 1 and omega 2 of the projective hierarchy, of the well-ordering of projective hierarchy. Under the axiom of determinacy, they are measurables, whatever that means in a strange way, and they build up through the spinor measures on either side. That's what it is. They come out of Genesis and the primeval chaos. And yeah. So yeah, if they go to something affine at the end, join them. All those minus C's and plus C's cancel, and you get a good homotopy. The whole idea is basically all based on some rather interesting but obscure work of Hankins on affine maps, which aren't truth preserving, between L and itself. And if they are a mismatch between at any point in the system of the non-commutative axons and dendrites, we get a map, a system of maps which doesn't have consistent truth to it. That consistent truth means that the basis theorem under 6 yogas of these univalent systems, which will become univalent, is actually a basis of the symmetric monoidal topology tensor product of what should be defined properly through arrows, I think, yeah, through arrows with some substantiation that they don't give in this community of game theorists and stuff. But well, they need merely to be a basis of that high geometry, and yeah, so that's nice. That means that expands it means that is actually the solution to the exponential real definability quite easily, because you reduce the number of equations defined by different measurable cardinals, but you get a lower dependency from the linear algebras. And those linear algebras really are matroids with the loop, and that is what is defining everything. Matroids come in group model theory as well. They are the way with these loops. These are supercompacts. Yeah. So yeah, as the cohomology of spin networks just collapses under forming electrons, then indeed the black holes are evaporating into that light, through the spinor bundles, which is essentially breaking of symmetry. People don't argue that very well. So it's all, people have remarked on the close connectivity, and there's some very loose way between quantum mechanics and girls, and it is actually there. Trade-off operators do not form, and they do not form sometimes because of this new type of abstract elementary class model theory, which is topological with those defects that prevent that forming any particular state, resolved at the end of the world. Not that the world ends. Everything has its place in axiomatic infinity, which is omega, and also Dedekind finiteness. Dedekind finiteness seems to control Husserl's horizons in Popinka ultra-power type arguments for his alternative set theory, which seems intuitively related very much to Hankins multiverses. I have to see multiverses which have a diamond and a square controlling all those breakages of worry and trauma and psychosis and its healing. one by another, adding a Suzlin tree by collapsing all the other diamond sequences in your Go, providing with a univalence. A univalence proved by Marat's theory. We have enough induction in the outlying universes that contain these surreal numbers which are non-Archimedean with their replete ultrafilters which are global rather than the local ones of the covalences, which is governed by an equal sign rather than an equivalent sign of thought rather than feeling, all intimately connected. I think of my first reading of when I was 18 of Friedrich Nietzsche and his ambivalences that I recognised I had myself at the time. I am not one person. I am a schism, waiting to be healed at the end of the world. Why am I so clever? Fumbling around in a genetic disorder of my mind, diseased at the fag ends of society. Well, that's mathematics. Go past the abstract elementary classes. Work has been sustained working by Shilaric has actually been done on these abstract elementary classes, therefore insights have been made surely beyond it. And that is what I am interested in. Topological model theory with Connes C-star algebra at its best. The distance over those models may be zero, but they are distinct in terms of their equivalence classes. That is the non-Hausdorff nature of these cartwheel Woodin cardinals and Profitebanes that have a local ring at the top to form their ultrafilters if they do. So that's it. That is a new regime. Topology, geometry, logic, set theory, all based about non-abstract elementary classes. Implicit languages are already dealt with mostly before that, in terms of compactness, etc. And I believe more is categoricity of non-compatible cards will be quite trivial, be followed by the existence of dual ultrafilters of non-stationary type over omega, which are non-commutative. They should be up like that. So these traumas occur naturally. They have to occur just because of the schism in numbers. Now, why do those schism in numbers occur? One cannot ever think of them being healed except at the end of the world. They are merely a new 0 1. Where does the 0 and the 1 come from originally? It is part of the process. The 0 must be provided from one. I think of Brouwer when I read him as an undergraduate, and Nietzsche. The 1 must become 2. The bare one-tuity, as Brouwer mentioned. I remember walking around Manchester University as an undergraduate in the wonderful library. The 2-volume Brouwer, the bare one-tuity. Unfortunately, his fan theorems and his spread theorems seem to be devised in terms of commutative branches, which is nonsense. They have to be non-commutative, otherwise the whole thing makes no sense whatsoever. But there wasn't really non-commutative geometry in his time. I don't know. Those 2 volumes are very interesting. Will it be a disappointment? I don't know. I'll read Brentano first. Will I actually be able to understand what on earth Brentano's going on to with his God-filled continuum? It will be continuum. It will be God. The motifs of real theory. Those cosmologies so beautifully resolved, and everything comes together with the Octonian E8 system of the split Octonian tensor product with that, which comes also in twister work with the 2 different types of time where backtracking comes in, a strange idea of backtracking. Is it needed for first order logic? Is backtracking? I don't know. I suppose it has. It has to in a trivial sort of way. And those backtrackings seem to be very much involved in the linear processes at that level of the non-communicative version in the mind of the nodes of Brambia, which must be branches in that non-communicative sense, which merely go to zero and bring with them their parcellations of the non-communicative tilings a priori, or in fact of general vertex operator algebra, which determine the string theory at that level. So, or the class theory. What is it at the end? What is this class theory? What is abstract elementary classes? What are they doing? Classes and classes, the things at the end of ZFC, the things that are the mereology of God himself, his classes, his ambivalences, his love. Classes, abstract elementary classes, topological equivalences, and their relationship through eventual univariance or not, with the equal sign, that equal sign that dominates everything. Where does it come from? If something was equal to something else, you wouldn't need the symbol to say so. Probably not, but you would need the feeling about it. First order logic, abstract elementary classes rather than non-abstract elementary classes I'm trying to work in, basically has a back and forth game, a Fraser game, that basically if everything is a submodel of another thing and the other thing is a submodel of another, you must assume those things are actually equal, but in a way that the feelings above them in the topology is just broken at that point. I don't see why they should be. That is the fundamental point of this. The real relationship in the human and animal world, healed by God eventually, one would imagine, of a certain ultrafilter at the end, which just Jensen decided to move from the Woodians. Okay, yeah, you can do that. But it's still you have this schism of points of feeling very similar thoughts but being very, very different. That is ambivalence. The ambivalence of the phyla, two equivalence classes of homotopy with the same Kohn-C-star algebra, the distance between two things there being actually zero, yet being non-Hausdorff in the quasi foundations with elements, those elements of our hereditary countable past and karma. I've said all this before. That is all it is. The Bu formula refers to different Fibonacci sequences are not equivalent. They are in different Gödel numberings. They are theorems, but you need more than one Gödel ordering. You need two, and then you need a whole ultrafilter of differences at the end of the world. And these are symbolic structures over the exterior product of linear differential operators on partial differential equations, which come from higher spinor logics, always higher spinor logic, projecting down both ways, like I imagine properly understood sprung rhythm of Hopkins, which is never repeated anywhere. You can't count them. It is a pattern that is evolving until they're resolved in the higher spinor logic. Enough examples are given until the reverse partial differentiation is found, and that aspect of the higher God and his love is higher equivalence classes perhaps fall down into those quantum mechanical systems of the pied kingfisher, the wreck of the Deutschland. All those voices sinking in pairs to the bottom of the ocean, where Genesis is, where whales talk to each other on the bottom of the ocean, through their feeling. And Varden Cliff Tower beats down to the earth to produce all resonances. Well, that's it. Feeling and thought, that is it. And what? So, that is really the dichotomy. And the three covariant things are systems of thought, essentially. And there are so many classes you can have. The only thing I did, the class theory and set theory, as NFC at least, is just a mess, and you have no structure. We have to impose certain structures there. That's all one needs to do. What is pretane forcing on those things? It's fine at what I've got, because the spirituality is merely sub-paths through finally into the actual monster groups as they combine. However, yeah, so now class structure at the end of the whatever it is, those different relationships in class, how you can have, they're not elementary classes, they are topologies. The topologies are there in this class field on set theory itself. Topologies on set. Who has defined these topologies on classes? I said some time ago that classes are omega groupoids, or the formation of those omega groupoids. Classes is this univalence. Classes is the face against the totality of the equal sign. The face which is non-Hausdorff, splitting things into equal things which are not equal because they are on different faces, different expressions of the face. As the conformal sign cohomology passes in its Bernoulli diagram, when it is non-commutative at least, which are indeed E8 representations and their further manifestations of unity in the Lorentz group or the hyperbolic group or the affine group of their long extenders till breakages fall apart. And that is basically the proof of quantum, so you using that that Hydra Hercules in a non-commutative way. There are gaps perhaps, but in the end it is resolved in that motif of motifs of class theory. That is the end of the world. You cannot reason any further. How can you reason without number or class or set? There is no other one, or category. There's no other one. They all combine as one theory. The quantum determines the 4 co-cycles of the higher dimensional co-cycles, which is what put it. People say that it's a torus. It could be a non-commutative torus. Yeah. One example. They're quite fundamental, but they come from something higher. An E8 structure, a four-dimensional split octonion, as we're all talking about now. People are mounting up on the same idea. It's not quite uniform now. Thought and feeling.